morning, beach bums. Currently, it's... What time is it right now?
Right on Lower County Road.
Time unknown right now. We're going on our first adventure. Don't know where. We'll bring you along. Smash that like, smash that subscribe button.
Oh yeah, I remember this. Grandma Daisy's was around here.
Check out
Right.
my first channel, Paranormal Believers Capital Army 2.
Take it right onto what?
What's up, beach bums? We're somewhat almost there. Also have the GoPro as well. There's sand dunes right here. We're here.
Both sides.
Oh,
I don't know if I'm filming or taking pictures.
that's why I did not hire you as my film.
Photos, thank God. We got some good ones then.
We're in Provincetown right now.
That being said, he had to figure out what he was going to do in this fishing village, and he actually went off to war, came back decorated with the Purple Heart, and still had no passion for fishing whatsoever. So he came up with this idea of starting a taxi service, and he started it 79 years ago, so I guess it was not such a bad idea. Because he's been taking people from the center of town up and over the dunes, back and forth for 79 years. So right on, a good idea. Like I said, mentioned earlier, it was destroying the dunes, and the sand was shifting onto the highway.
Okay. Yep.
So here's the dunes. This wasn't always the dunes. This was a thickly settled forest. If you didn't know that,
Wow.
it was all forest. That body of water over there is called Pilgrim Lake, but at one point it was a safe harbor. It was called East Harbor.
Okay.
So what happened is, when the Pilgrims came over here in 1620, they were escaping a lot of the political and politics and religious upheaval that was going over there, and they wanted to start a new life. So they came here as farmers, and they wanted to start a new life, so they came here and they saw this thickly settled forest, and they poked around here for about 5 weeks looking for the right conditions for farming. What they really didn't find is the right kind of terrain. The deal breaker was the water was found, but it wasn't enough to sustain the forest. So with that being said, they saw a piece of land off in the distance, which was Plymouth. So that's where they headed off to, and that's where they found the conditions that they needed to start their farming and to colonize and stuff. That's where they landed. No, that's where they settled. They came here first, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So with that being said, word got back to Europe that if you're a farmer, that piece of land they were at really isn't what you're looking for as far as farming conditions. But if you're a fisherman, then the conditions are off the hook. The fishing are literally jumping out of the ocean into your arms. So with that, the word got back to these fishing villages, and they also were going through the same hardships, and they wanted to start a new life. So they came here and found exactly what they were looking for. The fishing was outrageous. So with that being said, they wanted to settle, and they had to build their village, and they came out here to this thickly settled forest, and they cut down all the trees to make their village. So to build their homes, to build their boats, to heat their homes, to send wood off to the mills, it all, what Mother Nature took about 6,000 years to create, mankind deforested in 200 years. So with that being said, there was no vegetation to hold down that 1.5 foot of topsoil. So that topsoil eventually blew off into the ocean. And what we're left with was the sand. And sand had nothing to hold it back. So it was shifting and it was encroaching on the village that they just created. So the land, the sand just basically came. And then
We should have done like it, that's subscribe on.
what's that?
No, talking. Just vlogging it.
So with that being said, they had the sand. So the first difference that they did was to plant this dune grass that you see on both sides of us. So this dune grass was manually planted, and the government gave the village $30,000 back in 1830 to manually plant this.
Wow.
So you can imagine the effort and time it took to plant these dune grass. So, but once it took, it would send out a rhizome, and the rhizome would set on a shoot, and another piece of dune grass would come up. So it was basically forming this netting that was underneath the sand that was kind of holding down the sand, at least on the top part of it,
Yep.
to stop it from shifting into the town. So the next kind of vegetation that they planted will be coming up shortly, and we'll talk about that and other kind of vegetation as we go along.
Sand looks clean.
Very nice and clean.
Pretty much can eat off of it.
Well, you can eat off the land, that's for sure. So that tree right there, it looks almost like a bush. It's called a scrub oak. So in normal conditions, that oak would be a tall tree, but under these sandy conditions, it only goes to a certain height. So that's why we call these scrub oaks. This is a scrub pine as well.
Yep.
So the sandy conditions. So what it doesn't do in a height, it does in this root system that goes about 30 feet to the ground, which is a great, we're looking for a stabilizer of these dunes, so that root system goes right into the ground. It helps stabilize the deeper parts of the terrain here. So what it's doing is it's looking for that, we're on an aquifer, so it's looking for that water. So we sit on top of an aquifer, so that's where all this vegetation gets its water and moisture from. Then there's other vegetation that comes along, whether it's birds dropping seeds or just dropping their droppings, shipwrecks along the coastline that are carrying cargo that get shipwrecked. There's a sandbar out along the coast called the Beacon Hill Sandbar that's taken a lot of the ships.
Pretty much like the Bermuda Triangle of Cape Cod.
That's right. That's right.
Remind me if I'm driving a boat not to go that way.
No, you don't want to go that way.
Unless you want to pay for a new boat.
Exactly. So this kind of vegetation right here, it's called Rosa rugosa. A lot of people call it the dune rose or salt rose or salt spray rose. Rosa rugosa is not a native to here. It came on a ship from Asia, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. How it got here and why it was here. This shack up here that's on your left, there's 19 of these shacks left. Note that in any of these shacks that you're going to see, none of them have plumbing or electricity. They all have wells and they all have pumps. This one's pretty fancy. This one was moved back here and added to. But any of the shacks that you see now, there can be no modifications. They're all got some sort of truss.
Wow.
So they have to be maintained the way that they are. So the typical inside of one of these shacks might look like this. So most of them are now upgraded. They have solar panels, but in the past they were just propane tanks that would cool down the refrigeration system and the stove that they have. But now a lot of them have the solar system. You'll never have anything gas generated out here. The only reason why they allowed the solar panels because it's less of a carbon footprint. So that was the only modification that they could do. You got it. So when this became a national park in 1961, the dune shacks that were out here, the government came out here.